Hi, I'm Tony Quiroga. I'm editor-in-chief of Car and Driver.
Yeah. Uh, if you know.
Before we dig into the RS5 with Tony, I wanted to do a quick intro. I normally don't do this, but you're listening to the Four Rings If You Know, You Know podcast. It is a podcast about Audi from the website and newsletter about Audi. This website can't happen without Audi enthusiasts who care. And so please go ahead and like and follow, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on your favorite podcast outlet. Maybe you've seen the website or its presence on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and please go ahead and follow it. That's the way that site meets and finds longevity and continues to just focus on what is cool about Audi. And there is so much cool going on with Audi now after a couple years of challenges, right? So just started a Facebook group. That Four Rings If You Know, You Know is in the name of it. Look it up on Facebook. And I say that because as I'm producing this, the interview will have probably already happened, but I'm on board to interview Hurley Haywood yesterday, Audi Motorsport legend, to talk about Bob Tullius, who ran Group 44, which was the team that managed the 200 Turbo Quattro in Trans Am, right? Bob unfortunately passed away last week, and it's that sort of programming that is nerdy and about Audi. Hopefully you're learning something that is totally kind of up the alley, and I'm sharing it, asking for questions and people who are curious about input, things they'd like to hear from Hurley. I will try and make happen. Now, you probably already have missed that if you're watching and listening to this, because if you weren't in the group today, the recording's tomorrow, and I will probably run this podcast tomorrow. So sorry about that. But that's one of the reasons why subscribing, liking, following is totally worthwhile. So one of the things I've started doing, one of the Easter eggs, would that be it? Value added, maybe? I don't know. But every once in a while, there's a little extra something that I'm doing after the outro at the end of this podcast. So in this case, it's Tony and I chatting about whether it's the making of magazines and what I've been doing since Vortex, or our shared love of vintage Volkswagens. That's after you listen your whole way through a lot about the RS5, our shared love also of vintage Porsches, and the list goes on. If you want to catch that stuff, listen after the outro at the end of this episode, and you will find it. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled programming.
Can you hear me? Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yeah. It must sound better, right?
Sure.
Does it bother you that I'm looking at the screen not directly in front of me?
No, I do the same thing. I don't know if
Is
it
that
wakes
okay?
up the YouTube
Because I've got a
listeners,
bigger
but
screen over here to the right, but the camera's right here.
nah, I mean that's fine. I tend to be looking down a little bit, only because, goofy pro tip, if I switch to my MacBook,
Are you
this,
looking at it now? Oh, yeah, that's
right?
no good. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Although
I mean,
that's a pretty cool poster.
Thanks, man. Those are all like canvases I had at my Vortex office that I just hit the whole wall with it. Yeah, I've started using my phone because it just gets better quality, gets softer tone in the backgrounds. I feel like I look 5 pounds lighter, which in my 50s is welcome. You know how it is.
Dude,
Or maybe you don't. You're skinny.
I'm 51 now. I turned 50, obviously 2 years ago, whatever, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And man, my body is it's failing.
Dude,
I made it all through my 40s. Like, I was great. And I was always like, I never understood why people were like, oh, I wish I could feel like I did when I was 18. I was like, I feel great. And then I hit 50, and instead of taking Advil because I had pain, I started taking Advil in anticipation of pain.
I had a buddy who, like a local Carson coffee buddy who's 10 years ahead of me. And I knew him back then when I turned 40, and I was like, man, stuff's starting to hurt. Lucky you got through your 40s without that. But I was like, stuff's starting to hurt. I pulled my back, whatever. And he's like, at the time he was 50, and he's like, just enjoy it, man. It's like the 50s are that much worse. And when I turned 50, I was like, all right, so now I know what I'm in for. And he goes, yeah, and in your 60s, it's even worse.
Oh, fuck.
So just take care of yourself and do whatever, I suppose. Yeah. So I reached out to you because you were one of the folks who got to go to the RS5 long lead in Morocco. And I suppose that's pretty par for the course as editor in chief of Car and Driver. But I think I heard that only a few people got to go to this one. It was a pretty short list.
Yeah, it was me and another freelancer, Tim Stevens, who drove the car in Morocco. Yeah, so pretty exclusive event. We had a couple days of driving it. We had an afternoon of driving it at the track in Morocco, to sort of show off the rear differential, to show off, what it's like to, induce a lot of oversteer and the car's drift mode. And then we drove it on the roads the next day.
Any idea why they chose Morocco? I always assumed they were doing Spain because of Scari and whatever the liability laws were better in Spain than
Well,
Germany.
it was a German program, so they've got to get out of the winter tire belt.
Right.
So they head south, and yeah, I mean I think it's an easy flight it's a more difficult flight for Americans, but it's an easy flight for Europeans to get to Morocco. It's beautiful. I've never been to Morocco. I've never even been to Africa. And it's a beautiful place. And then the Atlas Mountains had some pretty decent roads too.
Do you remember? It's probably changed since then, but I'm going to sidetrack for a second. I think Volvo years ago did S40, like that final generation S40, the Ford-based one.
The Focus, yeah.
Yeah, but it had like the T5. It was a pretty sweet car for Volvo at the time. Like it was a great addition to the line. But they did the launch in Malaga, Spain, which is right across the Straits of Gibraltar from
Right.
Morocco, right? And I remember Roger Ormisher and James Hope, who were Volvo PR at the time, and they were joking about, for whatever reason, I think it was a James idea. They wanted to go across, like take the ferry across to Morocco for the day, buy a camel, and walk around some markets, and then come back. And I think somebody called somebody back in the U.S. and somebody who knew, I don't know, security or whatever. And at the time, Morocco wasn't like a safe zone. So
Right.
you, by no means, I think his spouse was like, by no means are you going across to Morocco for the day.
Well, I never felt unsafe there, but yeah, it has that reputation. And Marrakesh is building up. It was in Marrakesh, which is further south and a little bit inland, like Casablanca. And they're gearing up for the World Cup in 2030. Yeah. So there's a lot of construction happening. There's a lot. Everyone was super friendly. It was a beautiful country. It's a really beautiful place.
Yeah, and in fairness to Morocco, that was over 20 years ago. At this point, that's a lifetime in a lot of ways. But no, that's cool. So you go into Morocco. I understand there's a circuit there. You all were?
Yeah, it was pretty small. I mean, there's a go-kart track next to a very short track, and that's one of the reasons they chose Morocco as well, was availability of a track. And I don't know how many corners it was. It wasn't too many. And we rode along with chassis engineers, and they sort of encouraged us to. It was a lead follow situation where we were following another RS5 that was being driven in a manner to induce as much oversteer in as many corners as possible.
Okay.
Which is, I'm a track driver. I'm a pretty seasoned track driver. Actually, trying to induce oversteer is kind of counterintuitive. So
right.
He was pretty easy to catch because he was going sideways in every corner. But then you get into the spirit of that, and then it was super fun. And it does have some oversteer, but it's a lot of counterintuitive stuff where you're like stabbing the accelerator to get it to to create oversteer, and then it'll do it happily.
Well, so throttle on now. No real need for a flick.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, all power oversteer stuff. And there are a couple of corners there that really show it off, and you can sort of lower speed stuff. You can sort of drift around them. They had a slalom course set up too, which they're the head of chassis development, who's been with Audi Sport, since it was Quattro GmbH. I think he's been there forever, like 20 or so years. He took me through it and just had massive oversteer through and it's not the fast way around, but it's the fun way around. And right. On the last cone, you just spin the car and turned it around that way. Not so much with steering, but just all oversteer. And
right.
It was fun. I mean, it works. The differential works. It's pretty impressive. The car is definitely heavy. I mean, that was all of the once they revealed the weight. No surprise, it's heavy, but
heavier than RS6, I think.
Yeah. I think it's over 5,000 pounds. I can't recall the exact number they're claiming.
I have that,
but it's an over 5,000 pound car. But unlike
5,200 pounds.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. I mean, but then they had the freedom of putting the battery anywhere, and Audi's been chasing 50-50 weight distribution for a long time on their front engine cars. Obviously, the R8 is different.
Yeah.
But it's like 51 rear, 49 front, which for a front engine Audi, I cannot recall that ever being even close to the case.
Right. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but something you said a few minutes ago. So you go out, lead, follow, and he's doing the Drift King thing, which the car can clearly do, and that's a good selling point for people who like to, hoon or look good for the gram or whatever. But it sounds like you were
or Dodge Challenger customers who are
right.
thinking of making the switch into Audi.
Right. Well, we all want to be Drift Kings, I suppose. Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of Dodge Challenger people wanting to move to an Audi. It sounds like you were maybe going for like typical time, like
driving the car quickly. Yeah, driving the car quickly through the corner instead of playing around. Exactly. Yeah.
So for that portion of it, did you find it was pretty natural at that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't feel overtly heavy. They've hidden the mass really well. The battery pack is sort of over the rear wheels under the trunk floor. And it's,
right.
It's like any modern battery pack. It's big and flat. It's like a giant chiclet that sits over the rear axle. So, I mean, and the steering's terrific. I mean, the steering felt really good. The nose felt really responsive. Some of that due to the differential helping you turn in a little bit. One of the interesting things when I was talking to the chassis folks the next day was it has a 1/2 inch wider rear wheel, but the same tire size. And they just liked, right? A little weird. I'd never heard of that, where it was a different wheel, so you can't rotate them exactly.
So it's somewhat of a staggered fit.
It's staggered on the wheel, but same tire. Yeah, which is odd, right? And they said they just they experimented with it being the same. I think it's a 10-inch front and a 10.5-inch rear. They experimented with 10 all around. And they like the way the 10.5-inch felt because it just stretches the tire out a little more and just makes the tire a little bit more responsive on the rear end. And I mean, I didn't have an A to B comparison, but I just found that like a really interesting piece of trivia that I had not heard of before. And that's sort of speaks to the level of, tuning. Like it's a new tuning knob, I suppose. And it's one that they turned and that they liked. So I thought it was kind of interesting.
Interesting. I know they're like wider on the fronts than the rear for the RS3, which is a inherently front-wheel drive car.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the old Pontiac GXP with the V8 in it, where it had 20 mil wider fronts.
Dude, that's an excellent trivia pool right there. The GXP. That's kind of
255 front, I think 235 rear, or 245 front, 225 rear. Yeah,
I think the RS3s have always had that too, just with that Haldex setup. But wouldn't on the RS, I can't remember if the RS3 has different tire fitment in the front and rear. Wouldn't, if it's the same tire fitment front and rear, so square but not square wheel fitment, square tire fitment, wouldn't that make a different? Wouldn't that make a different rolling circumference?
No, because it's not. It's just stretching the tire outward. It's just the shape of the.
But then you have less sidewall, right?
Yes, it's what they're doing to the sidewall is giving them a little bit better response that they like.
Okay, and
it's not a huge amount of. It's a 1/2 inch. It's not. It's not a massive difference. It's just enough of a difference to irritate people who like to rotate their tires. But
well, you could rotate the tires, I suppose, just not the wheels.
Well, yeah, then you have to take
some mounting power.
Yeah. But I found that interesting. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't change the circumference. I mean, if it does, it would be minuscule. But just the contact patch shape and then what it's doing to the sidewall when you stretch it just that much more, they liked.
Huh, that's fascinating. Yeah, interesting. All right.
I can't remember what your question was.
Different rolling circumference. If it was.
Oh, no. Before that, when you were talking about driving around the track.
Yeah. How did it? So clearly it was the RS3 similarly. I didn't do that launch, but we sent somebody to that one when I was at Audi Club. And the emphasis there too was the drift ability, right? And
Audi's obsessed with that. Audi is a company that wants to make rear-wheel drive cars, but does not.
Right. Well, they want to make like drift. I feel like a lot of it's for, people watch Chris Harris doing his thing on video or, the whole Gymkhana craze or Instagram and, hanging a car with some opposite lock. And that looks really cool. And of course, that's in a lot of the PR shots. But I'm curious too. That is the purpose for some people in their driving. But I know, like, again, having worked for Audi Club for years, whether it's doing their focus on drive of skill and track time, I'm curious also how it does dynamically in not when you're not trying to hang the tail out, but the R8 the Mark 1 was kind of little rear wheel drive bias. It was a viscous coupling all wheel drive, and it was a little tail happy, but kind of manageable. Kind of made you a hero, but you believed you were the hero for me. And then I got in the Mark II, and I did the same thing on a track in that car. And with the reverse Haldex, it kind of made me the drift king I didn't think I was, right? Meaning I wasn't quite buying that I was that good with the car.
Right. It's car making you look good. Yeah.
Right. And so I the term I would use was like video gaming. It felt a little bit like I can do things in Gran Turismo or Forza that I can't do in real life. And I've kind of felt the same way in the R8. And I guess that's what I'm wondering with this. Is it like, is it kind of, one, is it competent on track when you're not trying to drift it? And two, do you believe that you're that good, or is there some technical going on, or is it quite easy for most anybody, a leveler, if you will? Does that make sense?
I don't think most people would notice it. And I mean,
Right.
most people are not breaking the limits of adhesion and lateral grip anyway.
Right.
So you kind of do feel it. I mean, the next day, if you're really looking for it, like in the hills, in the mountains, in the Atlas Mountains, when we were driving around there, we had a really good stretch at the beginning of the drive and in like tight corners and stuff. I mean, you can feel the rear end working. It's not working its front tires as hard. It's not beating the crap out of its front tires because it's working the rear end to help you turn through the corner. So in that regard, it works really well. And then if you do want to play around, and not that you necessarily do it on public roads, but in the racetrack situation, if you're really ham-fisted or I don't know what the expression would be. If you really want to induce the oversteer, it's just like slam the throttle away and it'll come around on you in a predictable and easy way. But 99% of the time when you're not doing that, it's just the rear end's a little more involved. The car feels a little more balanced. The turn-in feels a little more lively because it has all of that going on in the background. But it's in the background. It's not necessarily in the foreground.
And pretty natural feeling. Like,
yeah. To answer your question, yes, pretty natural.
yeah. Now, have you spent time in I assume you've been in previous RS5s, the B9s, and perhaps the competition as well? Like, any thoughts on how it compared to either the normal RS5 or the competition that had like the KW coilovers on it?
I don't think I drove. I mean, I think I drove the RS5, but I don't remember. I probably drove it like at 10 best or something. So, for a day, pretty limited.
Right. And amidst a bunch of others.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that car. I absolutely love that car. And it's, to me, even though it's an RS model, it's not necessarily, if I was, buying a track car in that segment, I probably wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't buy that car.
Right.
I probably wouldn't buy the new one either if I was shopping in that segment and I wanted a track car, just because it's so heavy and it would just beat the crap out of its tires on a racetrack. But yeah, like I don't know. I guess I don't remember its predecessor that well. I do remember how quick it was and how refined it was, and that's something that's going on in the new car as well. It's definitely very, very quick. They're off the line because it has the electric motor assist. I can't remember how much quicker, but they're claiming it's a lot quicker. And in our testing, we look at everything from 0 to 30 to as fast as it'll go safely in the amount of space that we have for testing. And I anticipate it to have, a pretty impressive 0 to 30 time, just because of the electric assist, and you're not waiting on the engine to build boost. And even though it has an 8-speed, conventional automatic, it's got the ZF box, so it doesn't have like, a huge clutch dump launch control that some of the dual clutch cars have.
And that 8-speed's been in a lot of cars, not just Audi, but in a lot of Audis, and it's quite quick. It's not a DSG, but in some ways,
it's terrific. Yeah, and it listens to you. I mean, if you call for a downshift, you're going to get the downshift provided. You're not going to over rev the engine. No, I love that ZF box. I think it's terrific. And then from a stop, the response is really nice. Like it pulls away cleanly in a way that escapes a lot of dual clutches.
I saw in your review, you mentioned it's got two-stepped regenerative braking, but not full one pedal.
Yeah, the Germans don't like one pedal driving. They find it inefficient. So they don't ever do it. Like Taycans don't do it. The Audi EVs don't really do it just because they're like, it's more efficient to coast or sail, as they call it.
Right.
But it does send some juice back, and in some traffic you'll like it. It sort of just feels like you're in a slightly lower gear. It doesn't feel like pedal driving.
I'll tell you that's something we have in my wife's car is an e-tron. I've had an e-tron not the same one, but since 2019 in her car. And so it's always had that kind of two-step down sailing, but not full one pedal. Had a Rivian for a little while. So really got used to that experience. But I guess what I don't even know how it would apply here. I've not really spent time in a hybrid of this nature where I perhaps want to use it in that way. So that's where I was going with the question. But there's part C is um, the stepped regenerative braking as almost like a synthetic torque braking for managing the physics of the car, right?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, it's more just, in your day-to-day drive, if your preference is to have a little bit more, quote
Right,
unquote, what feels like engine braking, but is actually regenerative braking. Because the car will, I mean, if you have it in normal mode, it's basically an EV for those however many miles. I can't remember what the range was. I know I think it's a 22 kilowatt hour battery. But I can't remember what what their claimed range was, and they probably are using that inflated European cycle, which bumps it up
right.
even further. So I think we estimated it was at least 40 miles of range. I can't
I think
recall.
you guys said 40 in your story. I think their
Yeah.
press said somewhere closer to 50, but
Yeah. And that's
it's
that inflated European cycle.
so how does that work with you say if you get in the car and just drove it in the morning to work, whatever, it would just run as
Yeah, unless
an
you
EV?
switch it out of that mode, unless you switch it out of what I can't remember if it was called normal mode or whatever
Correct.
mode or comfort. If you switch it into like sport or into the other dynamic modes, then the engine kicks on and remains on. That's typically how I like to drive my cars that
Right,
have gas engines,
right.
but especially performance cars.
Well, I would imagine this car in pure electric is somewhat, I hesitate to say underwhelming, but it's somewhat normal. Maybe that's
Yeah,
the better.
totally. It's not the RS5 experience that you
Right.
expect. It's
Probably
it's
like the
just it's just
A5.
a whatever experience. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So I mean,
interesting.
it's quick. It's not slow. It leaves the line quickly. If you floor it through the kick down switch, the engine will kick on. Past, it realizes you need some additional acceleration, so it'll bring the engine
Okay.
into it.
So that's pretty natural too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
So I mean, that's fine. I mean, I drove it typically just to experience the engine since we had sort of a limited time with it, and I wasn't really that concerned with fuel economy. Um, I drove it in one of the more dynamic modes. I can't remember. I can't
Yeah,
remember if it was sport
sure.
mode or whatever.
I am somewhat curious what it's like in day-to-day life. For a brief period, we did the two electric car thing in our house and with the Rivian and the e-tron, and it was cool, but the electric bills went up. And when you want to take a long trip, it's just nice to be able to get in the gas car and go. And a car like this definitely seems to be, if you want something that'll do all worlds competently, a hybrid or performance hybrid, I
Yeah, I
suppose, is
mean,
the answer.
I guess you're carrying around two powertrains with you, which is a bit
Right.
wasteful, and that adds up to weight and then cost. They
Right.
haven't announced pricing on the thing on the RS5, but I think in Europe it's like 120,000 euro.
Yeah.
And what the Europeans always pay more for their cars than the
Right.
Americans do. So I was guessing just based on the old car and RS7, RS6 pricing, Europe versus us, they would have maybe come in just over 100,000, which would put it up against something like a Cadillac CT5V Blackwing, which also has over 600 horsepower, isn't quite as heavy rear wheel drive, but offers a manual, no hybrid system, and is
Right.
one of my favorite sports sedans of all time. So,
Is it?
yeah,
They're pretty
it's
great.
spectacular. It's a
Yeah.
spectacular car.
The old RS5 would, if you loaded out a competition right before they ended production on that, I think they would like hit mid 90s
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
for
right.
everything.
Yeah,
Special paint
and
might
you're
get you
paying
over.
for more horsepower, a lot more horsepower, like 200 or so more horsepower, and a more sophisticated chassis and things like that.
The car looks pretty great. I mean, it's
Yeah, it looks
much wider.
awesome. The rear fenders are so cool, and I love that they go into the rear door. So there's a lot of cost attributed to that. And I just love big fendered. I mean, Audi has a long history of fender flares. I mean, my brain was introduced to the concept of fender flares by the '81 Quattro.
Right.
So
Box flares.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of history there that it ties into, which is super cool. Um,
Yeah.
Audi now seems to be obsessed with having, adjustable headlight signatures and taillight signatures, which I think is kind of silly. Like it's like, I mean, who's going to be playing with that? Um,
Right.
so it's like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the
Yeah.
exterior and the way you can
It,
present the car, differently
it's
because of
neat,
the
I suppose.
taillights.
Right. I do wonder how much people would actually mess with it. My daily now is an SQ8, which has that. And like, I said it once which one looked
Right.
coolest when I bought it. And that was it. But I
Yeah, exactly.
honestly
You
had
never
it.
thought about it again. And their
Exactly.
advertising sort of speaks to that too, because I think there's an e-tron ad where there's a little kid in the driveway messing with it. And it's like, yeah, you're the only person who will ever mess with these taillights or headlight signatures or, the
Right.
the welcome thing that it does too, where, it's
I mean,
just, I don't know. That stuff makes me crazy. I don't know
yeah.
why. It's just so anti purist, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just being an old guy and
No,
complaining about
I think it goes
things.
two ways. There's definitely a presentation value, and like when I walk up to the SQ8, like people will notice when it does. You're walking out of a school event with your kid, and the car does its dance. When you walk up to it, and I guess for some people that's impressive. And I will say, like being around the Audis a lot, I was I was somewhat disappointed that the Rivian's in a similar price bracket, right, as that car, and while the Rivian also has some goofy things it'll do with its lights depending on the
Right.
season and whatever else. The Knight Rider, I remember they did a Knight Rider thing while I had it. But the taillights were very simple, just like a light bar, and it was kind of like I was looking for more. I don't know if you know Cesar Montetta. He does the design on the lights, and he's a great dude. And what he's doing is really unique and sets a pace in the automotive industry. But I do wonder one about the complexity. And I have a friend who literally just had his LED headlight go on like a Volkswagen Atlas, right? And he has to replace the entire. It's not serviceable. You have to replace the entire headlight unit, and it's like. I think even for the Atlas, it's $800, right? Like, and
Oh,
I can only
wow.
imagine what it would
That doesn't
be
even
on a.
sound that bad. I thought you were
No,
going to say like $8,000.
I mean, on some
He
of these
totaled the
cars,
Atlas is totaled.
right? Yeah, well, like, yeah, and some of these cars, like I don't know, anything LED headlight, probably. I don't know. There is part of me, the purist of me, has been looking for like, just like to go to Pep Boys and buy the seal beam and drop it in,
Well, yeah,
like I did
no,
on my old
absolutely.
Volkswagen.
But I mean, people have been talking about this for 30 years. When Xenons came on the scene 30 years ago,
Right.
they're like, how are we ever going to replace these? They're going to be so expensive. No one's ever going to be able to fix these or do anything with them in the future. But humans have a good way of figuring things out, especially on the cheap when they're motivated by high prices.
Right. I don't know. I guess I was surprised with the Atlas. Like, just swap a bulb or something, but it's just not that.
No,
It's not
no.
that
Yeah, it
simple.
must not be that easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. And, I don't know. I was always a big fan of the old S5. I spent a bunch of time in S5s. I
Right.
thought it was like the most adult car. Like if I ever left this career, I thought this is like I've aged perfectly into this car. If I was when I was in my mid 40s and I was driving it, I was like, this car
Right.
is the perfect car for a 45 to 48-year-old who enjoys performance, who wants to enjoy a refined car but with a sporty edge with some performance. And I thought that was perfect balance, and I thought the price point was great too. RS5 is a little more exotic, obviously, and then this one
Sure.
even more so. And it should be. I mean, it's more limited production, but yeah, I don't know. The sweet spot for me was S5 in the previous generation.
Right. Yeah, no, that really is. The B9 30T had one of those cars at one point, especially with the of course they're doing it on it's the sedan
What's
now, right?
George's? What's 30T? Is that the engine code?
Sorry, the 3 liter turbo, single
Oh,
turbo.
okay, yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
I'm hitting you with my Audi nerd
No, no, no.
terminology.
I thought you were speaking engine code. I thought you were like EA 231.
Oh yeah, no, that's a little too inside baseball probably but
No,
no,
it
the
was it
three
was
liter.
nothing but respect on this side because I can geek out on that stuff too.
Yeah. No, I don't even know that I know the code for that motor. I should, but I don't.
That's the engine that's also like in Cayennes and Q7s and
Yeah, but the 3 liter single turbo is, as I understand it, an Audi developed engine, and then at a certain point when they started cost cutting past Dieselgate, this is really going in the weeds.
no, I like this.
A lot of the engine
We're doing
development
this for me, George.
right. Well, for us at least, who cares about anyone else? But they moved away from development like Quattro Gambeja or Audi Sport Gambeja now stopped kind of developing their own engines after the first 4 liter, the first RS7, right? That C8, sorry, C7 RS6 and RS7 got the 4-liter Audi engine. The next 4-liter that's currently in the car, in the RS6 or the RSQ8 that's still on sale, RS6 that just ended production, is a Porsche developed 4-liter twin turbo, both hot V, but that's Porsche takes over development of those. So the 2.9 bi-turbo that's in this car is the Porsche engine. And
it is that they had in Panameras and stuff. So it's not the 3-liter.
And the 3-liter single turbo is the more cost-effective one. It's also more tunable from what Javad over at 034 tells me. But and Nick, who tuned out, Nick Mercadante is their head of marketing, who tuned an SQ5 within an inch of its life, and it held up for a long time. And it was like breaking records at drag strips and making guys in those Dodges angry. But regardless,
the 2.9 and the 3-liter are both 90-degree V6s, right?
Yes, but the 3-liter single turbo, the 2.9 is a bi-turbo,
and then the other one's okay.
Right. And just from the development side, they sell the units back and forth, right? The 2-liter goes in everything. I think the 3-liter single turbo goes in just about everything longitudinal, right? And it's all an internal cost structure thing. The last remaining Audi Sport GmbH developed engine at this time is the 2.5. So,
the 5-cylinder, yeah,
right.
But I mean, how different is the Porsche tuned 4-liter V8 versus what Audi built? I mean, they're just tuning what Audi created, right?
Boy, that's a good question. If it's a different block or not, I don't know the answer to that one. I'm sure there are guys.
That does not seem cost effective if they've created a blank.
Yeah, but it was probably developed at a time that they didn't care about cost effective, right? Like pre-Dieselgate. I don't know when this.
I mean, I just mean when Porsche took over the tuning on the 4-liter, because that 4-liter's in everything. I mean, it's in Bentleys, it's in
yeah. Anything
it's in the Lamborghini Urus, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then I think there's a new 4-liter. It's a 4-liter, isn't it? The Temerario.
Yeah, the Temerario.
Say it with my English accent.
Yeah. Another 4-liter V8 in the family that's insanely high revving.
Yeah. What a neat piece of kit that thing is. Huh?
We had one at Lightning Lap, which is our annual track test that we do at VIR.
Right.
And we had one, and it's great. I mean, it sounds pretty cool inside the car. It has no real exhaust sound. Like there's no. Yeah, and I was expecting. I was so excited
synthetic?
to hear. I was so excited to hear 10,000 RPM.
Right.
And it's cool inside the car, and it's it's a ridiculously quick car. I think it looks great. But yeah, from outside as it went by on the straight, it was just it wasn't screaming. Like the old V10, like the old Audi V10 that was in its predecessor, the Huracan.
I feel like somebody won a power struggle in Germany where sensible has to take precedent over. Sound is illogical.
Don't they have a bunch of drive-by sound regulations, and then they also have particulate filter for gasoline engines, which I think mutes a lot of the fun stuff that the Americans get in American cars.
Feel like in the era of software driven cars, there ought to be a way to. I wish they would take the time to allow owners to turn off certain things, right? Like they've got what's the term? I'm blanking on the term for it, but if you're just sitting there and you want to rev the car to red light or whatever, and all the Volkswagen Group product now will rev to, I think, 4,000 and then just.
Oh yeah.
Right. And,
you can't neutral slam them, George, like you could in the old days.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But even I was, and if you ever see a guy, maybe you've seen him on the long leads. There's a guy, I think he avoids using his name in public, so I won't use his name. But he has a YouTube channel called Auditography.
Okay.
And it focuses obviously on Audi, and so kind of in my space. And that's what he said. Like he was, I don't know, somewhere where he had an R8 when they were still in the press fleet over in Germany, and there's some kids got off a school bus nearby, and were like, rev it, and really he remembered what an impression that left on him as a kid, and he got in the car to do it, and it's like, right, and you're this V10 R8 wanting it to do something, and it won't, so I get the sound, like if you're gonna get fined, you're gonna get fined. Couldn't they just turn off that setting and have the car go, warning, you will, you could be fined, right? But just
the Stingray, the Corvette does that. I mean, you pull both paddles, and then you can just rev the engine. Like it just goes into neutral, and you can just rev the engine and show off so you can influence the future generations.
Right. There ought to be a cheater code somewhere.
Important. Somebody needs to remember the children.
Right. Remember the children. It's not from me and my need to have a big ego or have people look at me and peacock. It is for the children.
What you're mentioning is also a pain when we're doing instrumented testing of manuals. So like a 911 has so much traction because you're shifting weight rearward. It's got wider rear tires, larger rear tires that have a ton of grip. And I think it happened in the 991 generation where it started limiting it at like $4,000. And I think the turbo engines, the naturally aspirated versions of the 9, I can't remember. It's been too long. But anyway, I tested a lot of those in manuals, and you end up having to slip the clutch to get it to cheat past that $4,000 threshold, because otherwise you'll rev to $4,000, you dump the clutch, and it bogs. And that's not the fast way out of the hole. It's not the fast way to 30 or 60. So you'd have to just give it the gas as it's rising to $4,000, sort of release the clutch. So it slipped. So you'd kind of trick it, and then it would like go up to like $5,000, then fully release the clutch. You get a little bit of wheel spin, and then
did you have to leave the clutch slightly slipped, or could you let out at that point and it would just drop back down?
You had to slip it because otherwise it'll just bog. Because as soon as the clutch engaged, it would just bog the engine down to like, I don't know, whatever RPM, because there's so much rear traction. So to create that slippage in the rear wheels, you had to create a little bit of slippage in the clutch before the clutch engages to trick the software into allowing you to rev it to a little higher.
I guess what I'm asking is
pain in the ass.
It sounds like a total pain in the ass. Well, I guess what I'm wondering is like, if you slip it a little bit and it tricks past, can you let the clutch back out, or will it just drop back down? You see what I'm saying? Or do you have to let it keep slipping a little bit until you go?
You have to leave it slipping. I mean, if you're too abrupt with it, you're going to bog it.
Right.
Just like you would if you did it at $4,000. So you have to keep the revs a little bit elevated as the clutch is engaging, so that you're transferring the correct amount of power to the rear wheels to let them slip just a little bit so that you don't bog and so that you get the good launch. And it takes some finesse, and it can be a stinky affair. Probably shouldn't buy a press car for those reasons.
Do you remember the days when they used to let us buy press cars?
No, I've never. I mean, a handful of people here have. I think our long-term GTI is owned by one of our production editors from 15. It's like a 15 GTI, and she still has it. It's great.
That was probably back when who knows that too. But back in the day, like we started doing Vortex in the forums went up in like 97. We started getting press cars probably around like 98, 99. And you could buy, I don't know about other manufacturers, I only know Volkswagen Group, but like back then you could buy cars out of the fleet. And eventually, over the years, I bought a couple out of the fleet. It's just like we would use it as a project car for editorial or whatever, but it would be my daily. So I'd buy it. And that stopped at a certain point. I think they started going to, those cars come in, get refurbished, go back out, because I guess it's, there's more money to be had. There was CPOs and whatever. But it was what I did. I remember I bought it back in the B6 Audi A4 era. I bought an A4 Quattro Avant, and I got the car. I remember talking to the fleet manager, and she's like, well, we have one in Detroit. Like, no. No Detroit. No Detroit, no New York, no LA. What do you have?
No LA, Give
Boston.
me the Chicago cars. Yeah.
So in Boston, she had an Avant. Like, all right, I'll take that one. So
that's hilarious. Yeah. You wouldn't have to put new front tires on it. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
anywhere where the buffs are, which is like you guys,
the testing. Anywhere where the instrumented testing happens. That's pretty brutal. But journalist miles are like dog years. It's 7 miles. 7 regular person miles is 1 journalist mile.
Well, at least for you guys who are doing instrument testing, I think like in smaller markets, I was using DC fleet most of my career, and that stuff's pretty. I think the worst thing they have to worry about is like curb rash on wheels. Right,
exactly. Yeah, the cars aren't redlined as often as we redline them.
Right,
which is pretty often.
Well, you're going for the number. I think that's part of the business, right? They know this. Part of me was curious when you're talking about the whole like revving on the manual to get your instrument times. Part of me was wondering, trying to do the math on where that might stand for manufacturers with like cost of clutch replacement, right? For the casual, not for you guys, but for like the casual, like maybe the common Joe is going to get in his 911 manual and be like, all right, well, it just won't do it. So I'm just not going to
Yeah, I
You
wouldn't
know,
bother. Yeah, exactly. And it's
yeah,
silly. I mean, it's a number and it's important,
right,
and it's important to us certainly, but I also, so in our testing, I have a 993. In our testing, the quickest 993 we tested was like 47 to 60. And I know exactly what's involved in that. That's probably a red line clutch jump. I would
right.
never do that in my car.
No,
And so we do have a test that sort of simulates more like the real world, which is the 5 to 60 test. So you're rolling at 5, floor it, and then that's it. Like, so, cars that are more responsive, um, don't have turbo lag or naturally aspirated large engine stuff with a lot of low end torque tend to do really well. So the delta between the 0 to 60 with, a big launch and the 5 to 60 with no launch is small. And the smaller it is, the faster that car feels in real life.
yeah,
And so stuff that's electrified like RS5, you have a smaller delta, and then some EVs are just quicker 5 to 60 because you can't game it. Like you can't game a
no,
launch in an EV like you can in a gas car. But yeah, then there's like, I mean, a 911 turbo, a single turbo 911 turbo from like the 90s. It's probably a second and a half slower to 5 to 60 than it is 0 to 60. So that's why that test was
hmm,
invented, to sort of give you the real feel of what the acceleration feels like. And in a 993, I think the 5 to 60 is like 5.8. So it adds 1.1 seconds. And that's sort of where the whole legend of, wow, that thing's about as fast as a Honda Odyssey comes from,
got it.
which is a Honda Odyssey is probably like 5.8 or 6 seconds to 60. And that feels about right. I mean, if
Yeah.
I'm not doing a huge clutch dump on my car, that's
Well,
about what it feels like.
the power wars over the years too. I mean, one, we got a lot more competent with, even small displacement engines got a lot faster over the years, which certainly helps. But like, I don't know. I feel like especially today in the electric world, like speed has become ubiquitous. So like chassis and communication are kind of what I like the hard to get qualities nowadays.
Absolutely. And if you take away, the personality of an engine,
Right.
what's left? It is that driving experience. Although
Right.
some manufacturers, like we did an interview with Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, and he's talking about, when autonomy comes, when cars are, very quiet at highway, if autonomy is happening, what's happening in the car? And I'm like, I don't want that to happen. I want to keep driving. I want to keep enjoying my car. So I don't know. Maybe that's more of an enthusiast point of view, but I think it's an important one. And that realization came to me because when I lived in California, I tested a base Taycan with basically all the chassis options you could get. So almost all the chassis options of a Turbo S at the time
Okay.
was the top Taycan.
And this
So
was like a 4S or the rear wheel drive one now.
it was whatever the base one was. I can't remember. It was just a regular
Okay.
Taycan. I think it was rear drive, and it had like every chassis option you can get on the base car. So you take it up into the canyons, and it feels exactly like the car that costs twice as much, except the only difference is straight line speed.
Right.
And that came to the realization. I was like, wow, EVs, that's crazy. Like, I mean, if I can live with a 4.5 second 0 to 60 instead of a 2.5 second 0 to 60, I can buy the same car essentially for half the
Right.
price. And that's not something that happened in gas engines. I mean, when you step up from a regular 911 to a GT3, it's a very different experience because of the powertrain, in
Well,
addition to the chassis.
e-
Should we shift this back to Audi, George?
no, I'm fine going wherever, dude. I want to ask you more questions about that 993 too. Questions I can't forget to ask is wagon versus sedan. We'll get to that. And
Okay. Oh yeah, great question.
yeah, but we'll come back to that because we're on this Porsche thing right now. I want to also know. I want to nerd out with you about the 993. But back to this Taycan thing. The the other thing they did with those J1 cars, so Taycan and RS e-tron GT, e-tron GT, is that like they're not doing themselves. I don't know if they're not doing themselves any favors, but maybe it is that like you get the base model, either one of them, or the most extreme model, either one of them, with the exception of that like GT one with the wing and crazy on the Taycan. It's basically the same car visually, different wheels
Yeah,
maybe.
totally.
And so, whereas you buy the plain Jane 911, and then you buy the anything GT, and there's even a GT3 Touring, there's noticeable differences. You can't really sleeper out a GT3 Touring. You can a little bit, but like you put the right wheel spec on a base or e-tron GT or a base Taycan, and it's kind of appliance. The cars aren't appliances, but they're so subtle from coldest to hottest that like
Right. Well, I think
you,
this, I mean, the same thing would happen with a Panamera or a Cayenne. I mean, there are base
right,
Cayennes that are debadged that look like, a turbo GT model if you get the right options.
right, yeah. In terms of like the deep-badge sleeper thing, they always kind of have.
Yeah, yeah,
I've got
yeah.
a I've got a 964, dude. That era was like
Oh, you
from
still
like
have yours. I
I
didn't know you
still
still
have
had
mine.
yours. That's
Yeah, I'm not
awesome.
selling that thing. Never. But yeah, it from like the base Carrera to the RS, which would have been, I guess, the king of the narrow body, like it pretty much the exact same car to like the Carrera Cup car is pretty much the exact same car with
Right.
stickers. And then you go turbo, and even there you're dealing with Cup ones. It's all the same car with a wider fenders and a whale tail. But so I miss that era of like there's part of me that misses that simplicity, but part of me also knows that the market kind of went to the, like as radical as possible in design. We can add vents and wings and whatever. Let's do it. And you see
Well,
Audi
there's a
kind
lot
of
of
moving,
profit. I mean, there's a lot of profit at the top.
right?
So you can give people a little bit more, give a little bit more special experience just because there's so much more profit built into those cars. I mean,
Right.
that's where all the profits come from.
Yeah, totally.
And
Well, didn't they move?
Porsche was not very profitable when the 964 was being built.
No, so they almost went out of business, right?
Exactly.
But few, they're very few, and with Singer and RWB, there are even fewer. So the values keep going up to
When
annoyingly.
I moved to Los Angeles in 2011, um, a aventurine green 964 manual with a gray interior came up. It had like 60,000 miles and it was $21,000.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, at the time, I owned a Lancia Fulvia, and I was like, "How am I going to get rid of this Lancia
That's
fast
cool
enough to
though,
buy that car?"
right?
And so I missed out on that 964 because I wanted to scratch that air cooled itch since they were new. That was like my
Yeah.
dream car. And then I got into the 993 in February of 2014, and then 6 months later, I would have been priced out of the market. It was that quick and it was that crazy, and I'm so lucky I got into it when I did.
I started looking. We must have had this conversation back then, and I'm just forgetting it. I started looking at 964s in 2014, and the first one I looked at was like it's pretty much my car. It was a black. It was a 92, so maybe a little rarer than my car because my car was a 90. Bigger numbers that year. But it was a C2 black. They all seemed to be that, the ones that I ended up looking at. But that car was 23 and it had like 90,000 miles on it. And at that point they were starting to move. Like they'd been in the teens and they were starting to move a little bit. And then that one got away from me. I looked at another one that was 26 a couple months later. Nicer car though, so that would probably account for the price difference. And then 2 years later, in 2016, I ended up buying my car, and it was at 46.
Yep.
And today,
That's
Haggerty said,
crazy. That's a huge
right?
percentage. Yeah.
Yeah. But at that point, it was moving, and I was like, I don't know that you could already see. Like when I first started looking in 14, there was a lot of junk on the market. By junk, I mean just cars that led a hard life.
Yeah, totally. I
And you
looked
could,
at 964s for a long time, and
yeah,
they were just unloved. Like once they
yeah,
went to like their third or fourth owner, they were
yeah,
getting no love. So there were so many ratty ones. There were like
right,
ones with like, terrible interiors, a lot of wear, and
yep,
I didn't want to buy anything that felt used. I mean, used cars are like used clothing. The less people drive
right,
them, or the less they're worn, the better.
right.
So I was pretty particular about my car, which I think I had like 28,000 miles, and I paid like I think
Wow.
40. I think I paid 42.5 for it, and like full service history, super clean car. It did have some evidence of paint work, but whatever.
C2.
I don't care. Yeah, C2 narrow body 95. So first year.
Yeah.
So OBD1 too, which in California was just tailpipe instead of the more complicated OBD2
Right.
scam that the 96 is an on get. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just took it
I
to lightning lap. I took it to VIR and did a lap
oh
in it. Yeah. And I usually drive more than one car. This year I just drove my car and let the other editors have fun.
yeah.
So it's a 4.1 mile track. It ran like a 3:16.6, but if it wasn't my car, I think I could lop off another 5 seconds off that time.
When you're paying the bills, that it's a little bit.
Yeah, when you're
See,
thinking about like, what if I pop this thing? Or
right. Well, it's gotten to the point. I mean, Haggerty, God bless him, right? I've got agreed upon value on the thing, and it keeps going up every year. We're
Yeah.
at six figures now on that car. So, but yeah, it's funny though. I think I went a different route than you on the car I bought. It was I went to buy a not to buy. I called him and tried to get a price, and he wouldn't give it to me. But I found a guy who had a high end dealer, had a '94, which would have been last year 964, so
Very
the
rare.
rarest because
Yeah.
they're really on the ropes at that point.
You get the you
And
get the you get the different mirrors.
yeah, you get the well, that's 92 to 94. Yeah.
Oh, it's 92 on.
But yeah, the 993 mirrors, the teardrops, and it. So mine still has the flags, but it'll. This car was like a I don't know 35,000 mile 94. Again, just like my car, black. It seemed to be the formula of everything I looked at, and the guy was asking at the time $50,000, which seemed like a lot of money for a 964 C2 in that time frame.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean now that's probably a 150 up car. But I hit him up and I go, hey, can you do? I don't know. I think I offered him 45 or something, and because this is as I'm starting to get serious about it, and he's like, why do you want this car? And I said, well, I've never had an air cooled. I want to drive it. You know, I want the experience. It sold my company. I want to reward myself. You know, like I'm doing this. And he's like, let me give you some advice. Buy the nicest, highest mileage car you can find. And this car is a collection car. Somebody's going to buy it and they're going to put it in the collection. And it's rarely, if ever, going to get driven. And it should stay that way. But you want a car where you're not going to feel guilty about driving it. So I think you're looking at the wrong car. And so I bought a non-original paint, but well resprayed, glass out, like effectively fully restored. He didn't rebuild the transmission, but top and bottom end engine, new clutch, new brakes, all that. And 100, I think it's at 170,000 miles now. But it's a big bolster seat, has no business being in as good a condition. Those seats are in at 170,000 miles.
How much do you drive it a year? How many miles have you actually put on it?
I bought it at 155,
Oh, so
and I'm
a
at
decent amount of miles on it.
yeah, I'm at 170, and I've owned it since this year will be 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I bought it at like 28,500. It's got, I don't know how many miles. I think it's got 43 or 44,000 miles on it.
still, that's sweet.
So, but I don't feel guilty.
No,
I'm gonna be dead soon.
Yeah.
I think about that. I'm like, I mean, realistically, how many more years of my life are there?
Well,
I don't
and
give a
if you're
shit
not-
if I put a bunch of miles on a 911.
it always bothers me, like people who buy cars and then just don't drive them because they're afraid of the investment. And
Right.
and I don't know how I'd be if I'd bought that 94, right? Like maybe I'd be a little more worked up over it. But like I have a friend who bought he jumps in and out of a lot of cars here locally, Cars and Coffee Buddy, and lets me drive whatever he gets. So like he's very generous that way. But he got a GT3 992 for a short period. And that was kind of like normally he's in like Porsches, but he doesn't typically go that high. And he splurged, he bought the car used. And he ended up selling it because even for him, and he's hardly the guy who never drives his cars. He puts a lot of miles on them, but like even for him, he was very worried about the value of the car and the pressure on it to retain, whatever.
Absolutely. And I get it. I understand it. I mean, when I crossed the 30,000 mile threshold, I was like, woo. And then I crossed the 40,000 mile threshold and I was like, now I'm old.
Right.
Like when I was younger, I was like, maybe I'll sell this. Now I'm like, whatever. This is my dead guy car.
That's it. Mine's totally my deck. Well, mine's sort of a dead guy car. I fear it is, if I am blessed to live that long, I will get old enough where getting in and out of it isn't really something that's fun anymore. And
right, because you have because you have the sports seats.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm probably heavier than you are, and they still feel good, so I'm good with it. I don't know that I'd fit in pole positions if I had like an RS or something. But yeah, my youngest daughter kind of, my daughter's named the car. I never named my cars. I always thought that was dumb, but then I had daughters and they named it, and I thought it was, it's cute that they do it. So they named the car.
What's
that?
I was going to ask you what the name was.
Heidi.
Oh, that's cute.
German.
That's sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. They were little. I don't know if they were reading books or whatever, but that's where we landed. And regardless, the little one took during the pandemic one day, she like ran past it in the garage. The windows were down. She stopped. I just dropped her off. So she got out of my car. She runs past the 911 and she stops. She sticks her head in, you get that smell of like fuel and leather,
Yeah.
and she takes a big inhale and like then chases after her sister into the house. And at that point, I knew like you got me right there. That's it's your car when you're ready for it. So, uh,
Oh, how old
all
is
right.
she?
She at this point she's 17. Yeah.
Can
So
she, has she driven it?
not yet. No. She's still working on a license. So she said she would get it
Oh,
right away. But she's been kind of busy with a lot of school stuff. I'm not leaning on her too heavily about it. She'll get it when she's ready. So
you got to teach her how to drive a stick on it.
we have a I do. I just picked up a Mark 1 TT for her to drive this summer should she have her license in time. We'll see how that plays out.
Mark
But I
1
had a friend.
TTs are nice. Mark 1 TTs are hard to find now.
This car was a friend of a friend was selling it. Guy on the West Coast, works at Apple, rewarded himself with a GT4 Spider RS, and has had this. It was his track weapon, so it's kind of hardcore. The suspension that's on it and everything. Amazing weight. Whatever he did to the short shifter on this thing, the weight on it feels better than any Mark IV I've driven. And I think it's got the Haldex chip on it. It's a tuned 1.8T 225 and aviator gray. I just need to do a couple things. I probably need to take those coilovers off of it because they're gonna beat.
What wheels are on it? Those beautiful, the polished five spokes, those 17s.
No, I'm
That's like
probably
my
gonna put some
favorite wheel ever.
that or the ALMS wheels too. I'm kind of big on. No, this car has it was track weaponized, so it has like I don't even know the brand. They're light and they look pretty cool, but they're not factory, and so I'll probably
Right.
swap them out and put.
Does it have a cage in it?
No, he didn't go that far with it, but it's quite quick. I forgot how good the 1.8Ts could be when they're properly tuned, and then I took this thing out and like, damn, and honestly, I paid $5,000 for the thing, right?
Wow.
Like the amount of he gave me a friend rate, like friend of a friend, whatever. He wanted it to go to a home where he was attached to the car,
Right.
and he's a good dude. It needs a couple things like a lot of those cars through that era, but like, what can you touch for $5,000? That's remotely that cool, and it's because it's a West Coast car. It's like no
It's
rust.
clean. Yeah.
The leather's in great shape. Yeah,
That's a
so
good
we have
teen
that.
car because it limits your liability because they can't really take very many of their friends with them anywhere.
Right.
Your daughter will never be having to drive.
Yeah. No, for now, yeah. My wife's like, she was a little bit, I don't know, about the size. I was like, oh, whatever. The 964 is the same size, right? Like but I'd rather have learning that, and then once she learns manual in that, we'll let her run the 964.
That's
But then I
cool.
have to, I've kind of like the old stuff. I've kept on the Haggerty policy, and no kids drive that yet. So, like
Right,
until
right.
they do, then I'll call up Haggerty and be like, hey, I gotta adjust and allow these younger drivers to drive them. But I don't know. We'll ruin the clutch on the TT. If we ruin the clutch on the TT, it'll be easier to maintain than
That's not that bad. Yeah.
right.
That's not that bad.
But that was a long sidetrack, but good stuff. So your 993 is a C2?
Yeah, narrow body C2, so 95,
Yeah,
which was
that's
they
the
were all
play.
narrow body C2s or C2s, and maybe they were
So
all
they
C2s.
did the
I don't
S.
remember. There was a cab that year too,
Okay.
but that was it. That was it for
It's
the
like
U.S. market.
pre-Vario RAM.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I've driven Vero Ram cars and it doesn't really make much of a difference.
Not much
So
difference.
it's 270 instead of 282, and then the torque peak is at like 5,100 or $5,000. So you do have to rev
Yeah.
it to get up there to get meaningful acceleration, but
Right.
I mean, it's nice. I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind. And I mean, I drive it not that often. I drove it more when I lived in California. When I lived in California, I was like 15, 20 minutes south of Angeles Crest. So if
Oh,
I
nice.
ever wanted to blow out the cobwebs, I just head up there and play with it. And then on the weekends, every once in a while, I would go up there and play with it too, with some friends. And so I had like Cup 2s on it too, which is pretty
Nice.
aggressive. And then I took it out. Porsche has the Experience Center in Los Angeles, and they
Right.
introduced like in late 2020, they introduced like basically, I guess it's a school for owners, and so you could just take your own car instead of driving their
That's
stuff.
nice.
And so I went and did that, and that's when I put Cup 2s on it. But that ruined the ride, and now I'm on the N5 spec, so the fifth generation of the P0 Asymmetrico Rosso.
Okay.
So, and that's a nice tire. It rides a lot
Is it?
better. Steering is pretty good. Like it's not that much of a trade off, and that's what I ran at VIR too. and they were good. I mean, they held up to. I mean, I didn't take consecutive laps or anything. I just do a hot
Right.
lap, cool the car, and come in. But yeah, they were super good on track, and it's nice. They look exactly like the tires that launched in whatever year in the late '80s that were
Right.
original fitment on that car, and it's N5 spec, so it's gone through 5 generations with Porsche. Yeah, it's cool. I think that's kind of cool that they do that because the Michelins, you should be able to get PS2s with it, and they don't make those anymore. They never went to Super Sport or Pilot Sport, anything. Like, there's no Michelins for that car anymore, really. So, unless it's an all season, but I don't put all seasons on sports cars.
Yeah. When did that happen? Because I think I had Pilot Sports on the car that I put on when I first bought it. And then
And you're on a 17-inch wheel.
I'm on a 17. Oh, you're on a
No,
are
I'm
you
a
on a
17-inch too.
17? Yeah, I did Cup 1s. It came on when I first bought it. It had the 16-inch cups, which are really light and forged. I think they're forged. But a really great wheel. Just don't look that cool, right? But the car rotated so nicely with that setup. And then I got the Cup 1s in the 17s and did some Michelin Pilot Sports back then. And they just aged out. I bought a set of they were replica cups, and I bought some real cups that came with new, like 1 or 2 year old. I probably shouldn't have done this, but 1 or 2 year old cups on, I think Michelin's Pilot Sports, not cups. Talking about when my head is going,
tires
cup
and
wheels,
yeah, exactly.
Cup on wheels. Michelin Pilot Sports. It had 1 or 2 year old. Was the date on those, and I bought I think the last set of rears out of Tire Rack to go with them. I don't think they had fronts, so I don't know if that ended. This would have been I don't know. It was last year, or the year before.
Yeah.
So they're not that old, but at the time there was not much inventory at Tire Rack, so I assume that was probably about when they were.
There is a new Michelin that is in our fitment, which is you have 255s in the back.
I think so.
Yeah. There is a new Michelin that's not as extreme as a Cup 2. So it's a little more streetable than a Cup 2, but it's still a Cup something. I can't remember what they call it. And I've considered those. That would be a cool tire to try out. And it's supposed to ride a lot better than the Cup 2s that I had on my car. Cup 2 tires.
Right. That's very confusing, isn't it? Totally threw me for a loop. All right, back to the Audi thing. So
wagon or sedan?
Did they? So this is a big debate in the scene, man.
Yeah.
Right. So sedan, or I'm hearing sedan only, but I'm hearing mixed signals.
No, it's sedan. I mean, what I heard was sedan only.
Okay.
The wagon looks fantastic.
Right.
I mean, the sedan looks great too. I mean, it's essentially a hatch. It's the sport back.
Right.
But the wagon looks spectacular. But I think RS sales haven't quite been, or I'm sorry, RS6 Avant sales haven't been outpacing RS7 sales.
Really?
So I think that helped drive the decision. And maybe I'm just missing them, but I see way more, just personally, anecdotally, I see way more RS6 Avants than I see RS7s.
Same. That's when you tell me RS7's outselling RS6.
I was surprised as well.
They don't publish those numbers though, so you're kind of relying on.
That's what the communications folks told me, was that that was sort of helping to drive the reasoning behind doing the sedan versus the wagon. Is everyone says that they want the wagon, and then when it comes time to actually buy things, everybody buys the sedan. But like I said, anecdotally I see way more RS6 Avants than I do RS7s.
Yeah, same. And on the market too, if I just look on Auto Trader on any given day. But what I wonder is conventional wisdom. If you want to hit volume, you're going to sell more sedans than Avants or than wagons. Then when I say conventional wisdom, I mean any brand looking at the United States market. I think where the data would go against that would be RS6 versus RS7. Again, anecdotally, I think. I don't quite believe that RS7s outsell RS6.
That was the story I was told, and that's how they're doing it. The wagon sales just aren't enough.
Well, I had a contact tell me it was sedan only. But what was weird?
That's what I learned on the launch too. I guess that should have been in my story. I don't know. I may not have mentioned it. I don't
Maybe
know.
it was. I read your story when it first came out, and then I scanned it today before the call, and I don't remember.
No, I might not have mentioned that there was a wagon just because I'm reviewing the sedan, and I only drove the sedans because that was the one relevant to our market, to the U.S.
I
market.
I noticed the Canadian guy did the same thing.
Yeah.
Which for me wanting a wagon, I was trying to look beyond that. But the other side of it is here's what's throwing off my I don't know if you have a horse in this race, but here's what's throwing off my spidey sense is that like sedan only makes sense, and I've heard from people who should know that it's sedan only. So the rational me should say sedan only. Stop questioning it. You're being a
Right.
conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Right. But the other side of me, so a friend of a friend, sorry, a guy I know was in Germany at the factory and he was getting a tour, and the factory guy said, no, the factory guy has no business knowing this for sure, right? He's not a product manager for the United States, nor somebody who controls product thought on the German side towards the United States. But he seemed to think we were getting the Avant. And then the day it came out, I hit up the PR department in the US and was like, all right, sedan only, right? And they said, we'll let you know. It wasn't like we're considering it, but it was like that hasn't been stated yet. So we'll let you know closer to launch.
Oh, well, they were pretty open about it on the launch program in Morocco. Yeah. They were like,
Which
"Hey, we're not
seemed
doing the
weird.
wagon. We're not doing the wagon."
But so the part of me, right, the one that the journey kid in me that doesn't want to stop believing, like that they didn't answer was weird to me, and that even more weird. Again, the conspiracy theory went off even further. Spidey sense was going off this week on my analogies. The A2 teaser, was that yesterday? It was this week. I think it was yesterday. Anyway, you saw like they did the annual media like press meeting in Germany this week. Audi did, and one of the things they put out there, this is like the business stuff, right? Like what profits were or whatever. And they showed a teaser of A2, which is coming out in the fall, right? And I didn't realize before they put the media stuff, the text out with it. I just saw the teasers, and so I hit up PR in the US again, and I was like, "Hey, is there a embargo? If it's imminent, can you get me the materials?" And they said, "No, because it's not coming to the US, so you'd have to go to Germany to get that." And I was like, "Okay, so you're more than fine telling me A2 isn't coming."
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But you're not telling me. So there is part of me that like hopes like somewhere. I know they probably made their business case for a sedan, and so that's I'm sure was a done deal whenever this planning was happening. And the other side of it is we've not seen all road testing at all, so the fact it can't come here without all road under normal conditions. Anyway, there's still part of me that wants to think somewhere like
Hey,
the CEO
George?
is like, yeah.
I'm sorry. I've gone 15 over.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. I got to get home so my wife can go to the dentist.
Okay.
I'm really sorry.
No, dude.
This is
you
an
get your
abrupt
weirdest
ending. I hope
conspiracy
you can
theory
edit
shit.
it, but I got to run. I just realized it was up
No
15.
problem. Sorry to hold you up. Thank you so much for your time.
No,
today.
this is super fun. I could have talked for another hour.
Well, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know. Just reach out.
If you do another Audi launch for sure, but even if you just want to bullshit about whatever,
Anything.
I'm game.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. That was super fun.
All right, man.
Sorry about that, George. I hope you can wrap this up in a meaningful way.
I certainly can. I think you exiting on the conspiracy theory stuff is great for you're crazy. I got to get out of here. My wife has stuff going on. So
Well, thanks, George. I had a lot of fun, man. It was great to see you again.
take care, man. See you next time.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
The Four Rings, If You Know You Know podcast is part of the Weekly Driver podcast series. For more news and features about Audi, visit the Four Rings If You Know You Know website at oooiykyk.com. That's 4OOSIYKYK.com. There you can also subscribe to the Four Rings If You Know You Know Substack newsletter that will keep the latest Audi news and features coming straight to your inbox. Four Rings, If You Know You Know, is an independent production and not affiliated with the Audi brand. If you know, you know.
Jamie and I sold Vortex back in like 20, I guess technically 2015.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when that happened.
Yeah. And after that, I started working with the person who I focused more on Audi when I was doing Fortitude, so it was a natural
Right.
space.
No, I knew that was your lane.
Yeah, yeah. And so they asked me to get involved with their owners club. That was like a lot of owners clubs that are independent was kind of aging out and not exactly aligned with the brand. And I got involved with that, took over their print magazine in 2017 and became their executive director, I think in 2019. And then,
Cool.
yeah, it was the print, moving to print was fun, having only ever been in digital, right? And we redesigned the book, moved to a different printer, and kind of up the quality and everything. But the problem at that time was just Audi kind of moved away from when I got involved with the club. It was still kind of they were doing their KB Kundenbegeistering program and cared about enthusiasts and maintaining that space. And then after Dieselgate, that sort of, over the next few years kind of petered out. And they went from funding the club pretty nicely to not. And the club was just kind of challenged over the years just to monetarily make it. And we were making, more and more austere, closing their office in Wisconsin, cutting the staff back, et cetera. And so the club's still there, but I was kind of burning myself out and stepped back, continued doing their magazine for a couple of years, and then they've cut that.
How often was the magazine? What was the frequency?
It was quarterly.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, about 100 pages. I probably have one around here somewhere. But yeah, so pretty easy editorial schedule. I don't know how you guys do the monthly because
We don't. We're at 6 a year now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, and it's because around 2019, we sort of melded the print and digital staffs. We went to 10 in like 21 or 20, somewhere in there. And then we went to 6 like 2 years ago, and we redesigned, invested in paper. It's a bigger trim size, more editorial pages, which is nice. But having it only 6 times a year versus 12, man, it's been crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I only had to do quarterly, and I have a friend who just bought remarkably affordable, it would seem on the surface, but I don't know if you know Jamie, or he's big in the Volkswagen space and YouTuber. He started out as a moderator on our forums, British guy, and expat, lives in the US, and bought Performance VW, which is an enthusiast book that survives in the UK, which is a challenging.
Yeah, I see it on the newsstand, like at Barnes and Noble, if you can find it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
they're still kind of out there. They got picked up.
I'm a huge VW guy. Like
Are you?
I've had 2 Mark 2 GTI 16 valve 2 liters.
Oh,
I had a
dude.
Jetta GLX that I played with in the 90s and modified, with European car type stuff. I've had a ton of VWs, a ton of them.
I bet. Well, you and I may have been on the same page with the GLX thing. I had a 94, so one of the German built cars.
Yeah.
And
No, that's
that was like
nice.
right
I had
when
a
we started the
95.
site. But I
Yeah.
did the James Sly Project GLX mods, like the Bilstein HDs and
Yeah, I ruined the ride, put 17-inch
yeah.
wheels on them,
Yeah.
BBS RX2s. It was a fucking beautiful car, and that powertrain was magic. That powertrain was
Yeah.
amazing.
And what
That's why I
overbuilt
bought it.
cars back
That's what
then?
I bought it. I bought it for the engine, and then in a car and driver comparison test, it came in like 5th out of 6th. Because on the standard GAs, it was kind of trash, and the
Yeah, totally.
soft. And I read it all, and I was like, "Yeah, this is all legit," but I'm in it for the engine.
Right. Well, tires really transformed that car, and then the
Yes.
suspension definitely made a difference too.
Yeah, yeah. I had P700Zs on it. I swapped out the GAs and used the GAs as winter tires.
Yeah. Those GAs were frankly I mean, no
They're
diss
garbage. They're horrible.
no diss on Goodyear, I suppose, but they were terrible tires for that
They're
car.
horrible. Horrible. It was
Yeah.
a minivan tire.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
That's
could
funny.
do a whole episode on VW if you want to.
Just old school VWs. We should sometime. Hey, Brian Scano on, and we can all be nerds. Definitely Jamie Vondruska.